The Collaboration Conversation is brought to you by Project Brickworks, the new ministry dedicated to equipping Christians to use their talents and gifts to bring others into a relationship with King Jesus. Project Brickworks is a crowd-funded nonprofit ministry made possible by amazing, generous folks like you, and we are so very grateful. We created the Collaboration Conversation as a way for Christians to share about their upcoming projects and how they are using the gifts and talents that God has given them. Our very special guest today that we are so excited to have is Tammy Daughtry, the founder of Coparenting International and the author of the book Co-Parenting Works, Helping Your Children Thrive After Divorce. Tammy, welcome. It is so very nice to meet you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. I'm happy to be here, and what an honor. I'm proud of what you're doing and honored to be part of it.
Well, thank you.
We are very excited to have you. It's not often that we have a guest on here that I've known for 25 30 maybe years.
She said, let's not put a number on it, but it might be more.
It might be more.
It's so cool how God, connects and reconnects, and then your paths cross again.
Yes, so absolutely.
When we got started a few months ago on this podcast, we wrote a list of everybody we could ever think of that we know that we'd like to ask, and you were on the list. Well, about, I don't know, a month or so, maybe a little bit more than that, my stepmom, Sharon, wrote me a note, and she's like, you need to have Tammy on the show. And I was like, well, she just moved up the list really fast. If Grandma Sharon asks for
That's
Tammy.
right.
So of course we're thrilled. So yeah.
Thank you.
Now we go way back. We go back to college. And we were there kind of a long time as dorm parents. So what years were you there?
I grew up in Colorado, and then I moved to Southern California in 87. So some of your listeners probably weren't born, but I went to California for 4 years, and I did an interesting thing. I started out as a music major, and then about 3 semesters in, I realized, what in the world am I doing? I don't want to sing for a living. No one would want that. I don't want to teach music, and I definitely didn't want to be a choir director. I don't know. I was like, what did I do with a music major? And so super, super fast story. I decided to be a general ed major, and I changed my major. It was all done in and out in 4 years. And you will remember Cora Alley, her and her husband. I was very involved in student council, or ASB, and I was the event planner. So Steve and Cora Alley were professors at PCC. Cora walks in my office one day and says, you are not going to come from this little college with a general ed degree. So I'll save you all the details, but bottom line, God used her to tell me about a school in Nashville, Tennessee, where I could study music business and record company operations, artist management, all that. And so that conversation was the catalyst for me then moving to Nashville. And I did a 5th year in college there, planning to move back to LA, but God's kept me in Nashville ever since 91. So,
Yeah.
Well, I know when we first moved here, we were at at New Church to Us, and you were doing a ministry fair. And then we ran into you at a dinner, and then you were doing a fundraiser for a friend of ours. And I mean, we just kept running into you. It was awesome.
Yes,
anyway,
absolutely.
So we're so glad that connection's continued. Well, okay, so you told us a little bit about going to college, but tell us about yourself, your family.
So I grew up in Denver, Colorado. I was actually an unplanned pregnancy, and mom and dad were quickly forced to get married, little farm town here in Colorado, and then they were divorced before I was 1. And so I grew up in a divided home, actually lived with mom full time, saw dad every other weekend, and had a wonderful childhood. I mean, there's a lot of great things that came from that. Amazing, wonderful family. But there were some complications, too. And so I just, in the long run, I thought I'd be the one in my family that went off to college, got married once forever, and never got divorced. So fast forward, in Nashville, I was working in the music industry, great career as an event planner, started my own company. And then for some reason, the dates blur together, but in 98, I started my own event company. And I was producing events for record companies and book companies all around the world, and really just thought I'd retire doing that. Because I've been producing events of some sort since I was 16 years old. And it's just something God created in me that I love to do. But anyway, I faced, was married 8.5 years, 5 years of counseling, relentlessly, we're going to stay married. We're going to have a healthy marriage. And our daughter was 1, and we divided, separated, and then divorce was final when she turned 2. So, and she's now 21 years old. So this is a long time ago. So I was producing events for a living, and I was looking for resources on healthy co-parenting because I knew a lot about what it was like to be a kid because I'd grown up in that. But I wanted to learn from people 5 or 10 years down the road who had made mistakes, so I didn't have to make those mistakes, and learn how to do a great job of it. So I actually said to our counselor, Steve, I said, where are the books and the classes and the events around healthy co-parenting? And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I want to know other people's success stories so that I can hopefully follow those and do a great job and raise a little girl who's going to love us both and have a healthy life. And, for people listening, sometimes, sometimes, and you don't have to be a counselor to have this influence. Sometimes we have an opportunity to speak hope into somebody's darkest time. Yes. And for me, that day was dark. We were figuring out, sorting out our furniture and where we're going to live and all those details. And Steve said to me, Tammy, he said, I don't think you need to read a book on co-parenting. He said, I think you're going to write one. He said in 15 years of being a counselor, in 15 years of being a counselor, he said, I have never seen two people make the critical co-parent decisions you're making right now for your daughter. She's going to be okay. And I, as a single mom, just beginning that journey, I just wept that day, not because I thought about ever writing a book, but just that the man who knew our story, and he knew it all, right? He knew the hard stuff. He knew the hurt stuff. He knew the darkest part. He still saw there was hope for our little girl. And so I walked out of that room that day with just a little more strength and a little more courage that though, her dad and I both were hurting, and there were a lot of details that were so hard and confusing in the beginning, that the person who knew us best saw there was still hope for our daughter. And so, to your listeners, I just want to say, if God opens up an opportunity for you to speak hope and life into somebody you love, maybe it's just a stranger at the grocery store, or maybe it's somebody in your family, but taking those moments to call out and speak to people when they're hurting about something you see that's positive and that they're doing a good job of. Don't assume that they know they're doing a good job, because sometimes we are our own worst critic. I really just remember those days thinking, are we ruining our daughter? What will all this look like? How is it going to be good? I didn't see anything good of it. And so I was so grateful that Steve spoke that into my life. And ironically, then years later, that angst of my soul, looking for resources, because there were a few books out 20 years ago about co-parenting, but the titles were so negative. There was co-parenting with a narcissist, co-parenting with a jerk, and I'm like, I don't even want to pick those up. It doesn't seem like it's life-giving. And so I did ultimately end up writing a book on co-parenting. And you mentioned it earlier. It's called Co-Parenting Works, Helping Your Kids Thrive After Divorce. And was honored to work with Zondervan HarperCollins on that book, and not to endorse divorce, but to help parents keep being great parents, even if that happens to their family. And so I'm elated at how God has redeemed the broken things in my journey. And that was the beginning, that angst of my soul of where are the resources? We need more tools. We need a roadmap. And that was the beginning of God calling me into what I do now, which is I travel all around the country and I speak about co-parenting and complex family. And I have more fun doing that than anything I've ever done in my life. And I give God all the glory for that he helped me grow up in a childhood that was divided, and used the fruit of that to make some really important decisions as a divided mom who was starting to figure all that out. And then that little girl, she's 21 now, and she's thriving. She's actually about to get engaged and get married. And
yay, congratulations.
So exciting.
Anyway, about, 6 years after I'd been divorced, I went to grad school, got a master's in marriage and family therapy to really focus on high conflict co-parenting and how to help children, thrive in those hard places. And then eventually closed my event company and 1000% focused on speaking up for kids and helping parents. So
I love what God is doing through you. That was a really cool little testimony you gave us. So thank you for sharing.
Great. We'll continue. Tell us about Jay and that partnership.
Mr. Wonderful. Ironically, near the end of grad school, you do a thing called a practicum. So you go into an organization and you're a counselor for free for 1 or 2, well, usually 2 semesters. So I signed up to work at the counseling center at the church on campus so that I could get off work at 5:30, grab dinner in the caf, see clients about 6 in the evening. And so one of the professors who went to that church during the week, she invited me to the single moms lunch. She said, hey, since you're going to start seeing clients, you got to come to the single moms lunch. We do this thing. She said it's called a double lunch. And this big Sunday school class of married couples would make a double batch of food, put out a big buffet. And that class, they'd sit in fellowship, and all the single moms and kids would sit in fellowship. She said, come and hand out your business cards. She said, because then, some of them might come to you for free counseling. I'm like, hey, sounds great. And so bottom line is I went to the single moms lunch, and it actually was for single parents. But when she said that there were 15 single moms there, I just locked in a visual of women and kids.
Yeah.
We had 2 friends with us. And I said, well, Angel, remember, when you look for a seat, we need 4. So she got her plate filled. I was going through, my friends were with me, and we follow her to the table. We sit down at this table, and the cute guy was right there.
There he is.
I'm thinking, oh, he must be like a pastor. He's coming in to say hi to the moms. And that's when I figured out a few minutes later, this was a single parents lunch, not just single mom lunch. So that's where the Lord connected our stories. And he had become a single father 3.5 years prior, not through divorce, though. He was happily married 21 years to his high school sweetheart and 3 beautiful children, full-time ministry as a pastor and an associate pastor. Unfortunately, he lost Diane in a car accident. And so he went, when he shares his story, he tells people he went from being, the everyday leader, pastor in a church to the single dad on the other side of the desk who had no tools, no roadmap for that grief and that pain. And so that had happened in Binghamton, New York. And then God had brought him to Nashville. And then again, 3.5 years after he had lost Diane, there we were at this single mom's lunch. and our story started. And I'm happy to say we've been married for 12 years. We blended 4 children.
Wow.
And now one of our daughters is married and has 4 grandchildren. And so our family tree is growing. And he is just, I call him Mr. Wonderful because he truly is. He's absolutely God's perfect gift for me. And I tell single parents quite often, in those years I was single, it was, I did date, but I really always was thinking about, a potential new partner. How will that affect my daughter? But how will that affect her father? And that weeded out quite a few people because there were not a lot of men who really could understand how important it was to me to honor and respect my daughter's father, and that we were friendly, that we showed up at events and we didn't hate each other, and that we had a co-parent meeting once a month. I mean, there were some people that just didn't understand that. And so I always paid attention. If I was dating somebody who had children, I paid close attention. How does he talk about his ex-wife?
Yeah.
Right. How does he show up and what does he say to his children about their mother?
Yeah.
Because
oh my gosh, yes.
There were a few dynamics there that I quickly saw we'll call him Bob. I always call these people Bob.
Yep. Okay.
One Bob, there was a moment and I watched him say something horrible about his ex-wife to his son. And that was it for me. I thought, nope. I am not going to date somebody who has that much anger and toxic stress about their past, because that will ripple into our family. And then there was another gentleman who I dated who'd never had kids. And I never brought Angel Lee around anybody I was dating unless it seemed really serious. But there was a day he was in town from out of town. And anyway, there was about a 3-hour window that she was around us, but I didn't tell her it was anybody I was dating. It was just weird. I don't know what we were up to. And he made a comment. He's real grumpy. And I said, what's wrong? He said, well, I'm tired of babysitting. And I said, babysitting?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's my daughter. Like that's my heart living outside my body. That's not babysitting. So I always say to, single parents, the guys and the gals, when you know that it's not the one, close that door and move on.
Yeah.
Because it is, really important and these were the 3 words God gave me: wait for great. Wait for great. Don't settle for good, but wait for great. And there were times I struggled with God, like, I want to be in a family again. I want to be married again, but I'm not going to settle. And God kept saying, wait for great, wait for great. So Mr. Wonderful showed up. I was 40 years old. He was 45. And now 12 years later, real quick, I want to highlight, I know it's not in our notes, but there's a book that I didn't know was out there 12 years ago, or maybe it's come out since then. So anyway, but a friend of mine wrote an amazing book, and it's called Step Parenting the Grieving Child. And so if any of your listeners are leaning in, or you know somebody in a family that is either blended or thinking about blending, and the previous parent has passed away, please get that book.
Okay.
There's so much rich wisdom in that book, Step Parenting the Grieving Child. It's by Diane Fromm, and it's just a beautiful resource on how to try to have a healthy relationship with your new stepchildren, and how to honor and really respect and mark moments that are sacred to kids and their other parent that are still important. And so there's a lot of things I knew going into that role as a stepmom, but if I had had that in my tool belt, I would have made less mistakes earlier. And it's a great resource for anybody who's in that dynamic where there's been a death. So anyway, but yes.
Yeah,
so
that's
great.
awesome. Well, so you touched on that you wrote it, but when did you write your book? At what point in this story did you write your book?
Well, people ask me at conferences all the time. They pick it up. How long did it take you to write it? And here's what I tell them.
Oh, I'm
I
excited.
wrote it in 3 weeks over 6 years. So
Oh my! I'm gonna borrow that. That's me in a nut. That's awesome. I love.
there
that.
were so many stops and starts. I had an agent, and then I had a co-writer, and then I had another co-writer. I didn't trust myself to know how to write a book. I was an event producer, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I knew there needed to be more tools, but I wasn't really seeing myself as the voice on it. And I'll tell you, there's a friend of mine, Kevin Jackson, who he's in heaven now, but he and his wife were 2 of the first supporters of our ministry. They helped me with funding. They created my logos, all the graphics. They held fundraisers for me. Jana and Kevin Jackson forever will be an anchor to this ministry.
Oh, wow.
And Kevin asked me one day about my book. And I said, Kevin, I'm just done writing. There's just too much, and I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do events. And he gave me what I call a big brother kick in the butt and challenged me on some things. And I'm an overachiever. So if you give me a deadline, I'm going to meet that deadline, even if I have to pull an all-nighter to get it done.
Yeah.
We had a really important conversation at their dinner table. And he reignited in me the need to write this book. And he said, quit trying to co-write with everybody else. Just write your story. Write your story. Get it out of your heart and your head and put it on paper so it can help the world. And he said some other things around that, which was just out of character for him. But he was really adamant, like, get this done. And thankfully, he gave me a deadline. And I wrote the first part. And then another buddy gave me a deadline, and I wrote the rest of it. And so I had this final deadline. It was August 31st of 2009. And so 3 weeks before it, while working full-time at Trevecca Nazarene University, seeing clients 3 nights a week, single mom, and finishing a research project, I got up at 4 a.m. for 3 weeks in a row, and I wrote a chapter between 4 and 7. And I had 5 women on my friendship team that held me accountable. I said, I'm going to send you 1 chapter every day. If it doesn't show up, somebody call me. And for 3 weeks, I just wrote. And by that point, we're 6 years into the marination of life and all the things, I've learned along the way. And God was good. I mean, I couldn't get up that early ever now. But the crazy part is I finished that book. What was it? 3 weeks before I met Jay. And if I had not finished that book,
and you met Mr. Wonderful.
Once I met him, I was so in love, and he had 3 children, and our life just became this ongoing, beautiful bloom of chaos. Mm-hmm. I would have never written the book.
Yeah.
So God knew I needed a big brother kick in the tail.
I love
Give
that.
me a deadline, because I believe God knew
Yeah.
that September 20th, I would meet Mr. Wonderful. And I
Yeah.
had to get those words on paper before then, because
I
God
believe
knew
it
I'd
too.
be too in love to ever do it. So anyway.
I believe that 100%.
That's awesome.
That is
So-
awesome. Well, so you talked about how you met Jay. How is he? How do you guys work together?
He started, I mean, as soon as we were married, I mean, he started traveling to conferences with me, and he is such a good communicator, and he was so interested and wanting to help that, little by little, I started having him speak on different topics that I had designed in our co-parent work. And eventually, I mean, we actually created a whole curriculum together called One Heart, Two Homes, Coparenting Kids of Divorce to a Positive Future. He and I produced that together, did all the interviews. That launched in 2014. And then, and actually we're working on a book together that will hopefully be out this fall. And I just see how God has woven our stories together, and different pain points, different ways we help people. But we are definitely better at this together. And men like to hear from men. They will listen to me. And I'm back to the book. I ended up publishing the book just as a solo author, but I asked some very influential men in the community, the faith community, to endorse the book and to speak specifically about how it can help fathers. Because I wanted every dad to know, if they happen to pick that up and look at the front, that dads are supported and seen and cheered for as much as moms are in that book. And I've gotten so many great emails and things over the years from men who have read the book who I didn't know, but they just thanked me, for championing their fatherhood. And so, with Jay, he can speak about things differently, but he also has that different pathway that he became a single dad. And there are so many people who have lost a spouse and were, single parents that don't have the stigma of divorce, but they also, they have different challenges as they blend and create new families. And so he just adds so much to it. So,
well, you did mention, if it's okay, the One Hearts, Two Homes project that you worked on. And we actually have a clip from that video. Can we show that now?
Yes, that'd be great.
Do it.
All right, let's do that.
Now, there's a clear plan to help parents navigate the treacherous waters of a broken family to a safe, stable place of help and hope. Here is a resource that leads parents to discover the voice of their child's heart.
I'm here to say there is hope. Children of divorce can be raised well. They can have a healthy life, a free life that is not defined by anger and resentment and pain. They can be given the freedom to love both mom and dad. They can grow up and become healthy young adults.
One Heart, Two Homes will give single parents and step-parents the tools and insights necessary to help their children avoid the negative outcomes associated with divorce. Parents will be empowered to help their children grow up with one whole heart between two stable homes.
I love that clip. I love what you're doing. I love where your heart is. And I'm just so proud. And I think that you've just been obedient to God's calling and he's used every part of your story in this book and in the ministry. Yeah. So anyway, I'm just really thankful.
Well, so tell us a little bit more about One Heart and Two Homes.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, ironically, back when I was at the beginning of my own divorce, the phrase One Heart, Two Homes started coming out of my mouth when I was talking to my divorce attorney. And she was asking me, oh, you need to do this, and you need to do this, and go for this. And I said, no, I really don't want to do some of those things. And she was like, I've never had a client like you. Why wouldn't you want more money? Or why wouldn't you want this and that? And I said, honestly, my daughter's going to grow up with one heart between two homes. And I want her heart to be as whole as possible as she comes and goes between us. And so there were some really uncommon choices I made early on about keeping holidays whole and letting Christmas be like a 10-day period so that wherever she went, if she went to Georgia with her daddy or she went to Colorado with me, she could just go and she could enjoy it instead of the 6 p.m. Christmas Eve thing that parents do sometimes. And kids are just on planes and trains all night long trying to get back and forth and things like that. But then even the financial decisions and and proximity, how close we were going to live to each other. I actually wanted it in there that we would live in a 20-mile radius to have 50-50 custody, because I did not want her to grow up on a freeway. I mean, I'm thankful that I had both parents in my life and that I had access to them. And so it's not a negative, but I just didn't want my daughter to be in and out of two cities, or, because in Nashville, you can live in Mount Juliet and have people live in Franklin, and you're in a 1 hour drive, maybe a 2 hour drive with traffic.
Yep.
I mean, we're not LA, but we're kind of there sometimes. So I just did some uncommon things in the beginning to try to protect her heart and keep it as whole as possible between those two homes. And so then as I was speaking and doing those live events and I would talk about that concept, it seemed that those 4 words were the words that stuck with people. Elevator conversations. I'd see somebody 5 years later, "Oh, you're the 1 heart, 2 homes lady."
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you are now.
So when we created this video content, and again, coming from the music industry and seeing how music has such a power, to bring hope and also to get our attention. You think about a Kleenex commercial, or we can watch a 10-second clip and be in tears sometimes.
Yes.
I wanted to leverage the power of music and art and the creative to help angry, hostile co-parents get beyond their brick walls where they're pointing fingers at each other and staying mad for decades. I wanted to try to get past that. So I wanted to create video vignettes. And in this series, there's actually, if you use it as a small group, if churches have a small group or a Bible study, they can do it in a 10-week format. It fits really well, kind of like Divorce Care or a Beth Moore study or Priscilla Shire, those workbooks and videos, you plug and play and have small group discussion. It fits really well. But I also wanted to have little short video vignettes for therapists and for pastors and for leaders that work with people one-on-one who don't have time to spend showing a 30, 40-minute video, but they can go right to a very specific topic and help a hurting parent. So we created it. Basically, it's 31 short video vignettes, and we interviewed 31 other people. So like back before it was even a topic about, or as much of a topic about being sensitive to connecting with all different demographics of people, we actually on purpose interviewed people with all different skin types, all different ages and stages of life. Skinny people, heavy people, all people. I wanted to create a parent resource that every parent who ever saw any of it would find somebody they felt like they could connect to. And because, these pain points come into all of our families, the conversation, and we're real practical on the videos. We talk about things like how to handle handoffs, how to handle college graduation. What about co-parenting after 18? We talk about communication and having co-parent meetings and not talking about business and handoffs. It's a very practical, hands-on, solution-driven resource. And but we also created it on purpose to fit right into a church, but also to fit into a public school and a public counseling center where you couldn't talk about anything Christian. So the video content is very hope-infused. And it fits in both of those kinds of organizations really, really well. And I'm elated to tell you that we're currently on a on-ramp with Right Now Media, and they have an app that over 22,000 churches are using, and their congregants get to use it for free.
Wow.
So by the end of probably in the month of May of 2021, whoever watches this whenever, May 2021, you should be able to find 1 Heart, 2 Homes within the Right Now Media app. It also will be in the Right Now Media or Right Now at Work that businesses and corporations use. And it's free to anybody who has access to those apps. And then we also partner with an organization called Brickworks, and they deliver video content into pregnancy centers all around the world. And so we've been working with them to help parents who may have a unplanned pregnancy and maybe not going to even be in a relationship, but they're going to try to co-parent. They're using 1 Heart, 2 Homes in that setting.
Wow.
And then we partner with an organization called the Step Family Network because, probably most step families are formed out of some kind of loss. And many of them have the co-parent dynamic where Kids are coming and going between two homes, maybe two states or two countries even. So it's available in a lot of different places to help the single parent, the step parent, and grandparents. Lots of grandparents go through it because their children are going through divorce, or maybe they've already divided. So it's out there, and it's really helping make an impact. And then for professionals, people who are therapists or educators, maybe they're pastors or volunteers in their church. There's actually on our site, there's a deep dive training where you can become a co-parent strategist. There's, I think, 16 modules to that training, and people can really dig in and become well-versed in complex family. Wow. And then they can use those tools, in their counseling, in their coaching, and, all of their work. And so we're just continually creating new content, to try to help the parent directly, but then help the people who help parents. So
that is awesome.
That is very cool.
You just listed so many resources.
I know, that was great.
That was awesome. That was so cool. Well, just to transition a little bit, as you know, our podcast is all about talents and gifts.
Yes.
We love naming our talents and gifts. We want to name the gift that God has given us, and because He did that on purpose. And you are clearly using a lot of your talents and gifts, and He's blessing you, and you're building your brick in collaboration with Him for the kingdom. And I think that's just really incredible. That's what we're all about. That's what we are hoping to inspire our listeners to do. And so if you wouldn't mind sharing with us some of your talents and your gifts and how you feel like you're using them.
So extrovert, yes. And so where I see that being a positive is I love to connect with people. I mean, if I, make eye contact with somebody at the grocery store, and not as much now because, in this 2021, we're wearing masks still in some places, but I'm the person who smiles, who says hello. I will hear myself say something before I realize I've said it. If I saw one of you, I love your hair. It's such a pretty color, or what a great outfit.
I thought that about your lipstick earlier. I was like, I need to tell her how bomb her lipstick is. So I'm telling you right now.
That's my nickname on Instagram, Tammy Lipstick.
I love it.
So you can find me there. It's kind of a mix of professional and personal stuff, but I love connecting. But so the positive about my extrovertness, I do love to connect with new people. And there's another great resource I use in our counseling practice called StrengthsFinder. And what's neat about their resources, they help people understand their top 5 strengths and in the unique order that they are designed, like how God designed you. And whether you're working in a career path or in your personal relationships, you can really understand the great things about you, and you can understand the great things about the person that's so different than you. And then try to hopefully come to a place where you're both playing to your strengths instead of trying to feel like you're being forced to become something you're not. So in that one, I'm called a woo, which is winning others over. And it means that I love to champion a cause, but I also love to make a meaningful connection with each new person. And I just had to laugh and go, thank you, Lord. I can embrace that. I can be okay with being the talker in the group. But I do, when I'm around people that are highly introverted, I try to be very aware that is not always their favorite thing to do. Talk to a stranger and have 49 questions thrown at them. Because I'm so curious about people. I want to learn their whole life story while we're standing in the grocery line. But a high introvert can be great with people, but they don't necessarily like to walk into a room and they see 20 strangers, and that's very stressful. So being compassionate for people that are different than I am, and trying to use those gifts in a way that I can help people feel comfortable. That's what I try to do with it. And then the other one, I would say, I'm definitely a communicator.
Yes.
You do that very well.
Well, thank you. But here's the thing, for parents that are listening, I was the kid that had all the marks, talks too much. When I was in school.
She's looking at me because she's like, yeah. We're cut from the same cloth, Tammy.
Yes. Trying to rein that in and see, I've never actually talked to my mom about that. It'd be interesting to see what did she feel like when constantly the report cards came back. I was straight A's, talks too much. So I think, sometimes that gift, depending how it's being used, can sometimes be a challenge. But yeah, I've loved words ever since I was little, and hearing other people's words. But the other thing I will say, in knowing my gifts or my talents, I think all of them, no matter how wonderful they are, they have another side. And part of what I've had to know is that for a person who loves to communicate, meet new people, and make a meaningful connection. There was a moment when my book first came out. I was at a conference, so excited to be there. I was finally a real author with a real book and a real publisher, and, real excited. Yeah. And yet there was this moment, and I won't go into the details of it, but where I could definitely tell there was a person of high influence who did not think the book was a good idea. They were very adamant that, well, we couldn't promote that book. We don't want to endorse divorce. And in those moments where trying to share the vision of this little softback book that was trying to help parents be good parents, even in hard places, when somebody didn't believe in it, wasn't interested, and didn't even want a free copy, it's like a knife in the heart. Yeah. So I've had to remind myself and ask my husband even, like, be my extra eyes and ears. I don't want to be defined by the stuff I do. And I don't want my value to come from that. I can know my strengths and my gifts and my talents, but at the end of the day, I never want to forget that I'm a daughter of the King.
Amen. Mm-hmm.
I am a wife to Mr. Wonderful. And even before that, I was a mom to a sweet daughter, that my identity is in Christ, and my identity and the role I play in this world, it matters no matter what anybody else thinks or says. And there are times you take a high extrovert and you have a conversation with somebody they think is amazing, and that person doesn't connect. We carry that.
Yeah.
We feel it. And sometimes it can really impact us in a tough way, where some of our friends who are not so worried about what people think are like, why do you even care?
Right.
I'm like, how can you not care?
How can you not care?
So
totally get it.
Yeah.
No, and that was super life-giving. I want to thank you for that encouragement, because I think that is really, really encouraging to our listeners. I want to also add compassion. I think that you are a really compassionate person. I don't know you very well, but just from this conversation and the work that you do and where your heart is and the way you talk about people, I think you can be a people person, like you enjoy people without that compassion element. But I think I definitely think you have it. And so I think that's a gift that I want to name for you, because I can see your heart. I can see that. And it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that.
I agree.
Thank you.
And
that's a gift.
Yeah, especially with both of us being extroverts. We are totally listening and taking in what you're saying about our identity in Christ.
And I've never resonated with anyone more when you're talking about someone saying that about you, and you just like, it's like your soul just gets shriveled up real fast. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm with you. We're the same.
Yeah.
Totally.
We have to really listen to God and to know at the end of the day, if there is a calling in our life and we are marked for ministry, Satan's going to use every chance he can and everything about us, our strengths and our talents, to even hit us in those hard places to make us doubt that calling.
Yeah.
And boy, he battled with me, and he still does. It's not completely over. There's still times I wonder if I'm doing it right, or have I done enough, or, but I just go back to knowing the voice of God, listening to him, going to the word, testing everything against the truth. And sometimes saying yes to God means you have to turn off your ears to well-meaning people who don't understand that God has a really unique call.
Yes.
And no, it doesn't fit into the box very easily when you're cheering for divorced parents.
Yeah.
Right.
And thankfully, and again, anybody listening, if you have a friend who is starting a new ministry or feels some kind of passion to help a certain kind of demographic or do something that has never been done before, pray for him and cheer for him.
Yes.
because God's probably calling them to do that very thing that isn't normal. And as long as it honors God, and you can you can test it against the Bible, and you can see that there are, godly principles, then cheer for your friends, support their ministries, donate to them, tell them, yes, you're doing a good job. Don't give up, because, for me, none of this is about me. This is for the millions of children around the world who hopefully are impacted by a mom or a dad who finds some hope, who finds some affirmation, who knows that they can still be an amazing parent, even if they're not in a traditional family. And so it's a ripple effect. I'm trying to reach the parents, and they hopefully make healthier choices for their children. And these children will grow up and hopefully become young adults who believe in marriage, who believe in God, who believe in family, and want that for their future, even if they come from a divorced family. I'm after a 2-3 generation effect here. So anyway, that was a longer story than I meant. Sorry.
No, that was awesome. Wonderful. And it was encouraging to us. We just started a new ministry, in case you're wondering. And so that was really, you probably didn't mean to encourage us, but that was really encouraging to us.
Even specifically to us.
But then also what you were saying earlier, again, I'm going to reiterate how important obedience is. And just God has clearly blessed the obedience despite going through all of those trials, and you just kept persevering and answering the calling. It's just,
and I turned down a 6-figure job as an event, 6 figures. Turned it down from one of my event clients because I knew God didn't call me to work in a book company. He called me to build a ministry. And even my advisory board, one of the ladies thought I was a nut. She's like, "Are you kidding me? You could make a good income and put it in ministry." Right. I said, "No. If I work for that company 7 days a week, I'll never be able to do this ministry."
Right.
So,
oh my gosh.
Fish and loaves.
Yes.
Financial spreadsheets did not make sense when I was a single mom. Some days now they don't even make sense. What I know is God has a call, and I have a role to play in the world. And I'm not the only voice. Thankfully, there are more people who understand co-parenting, and they're speaking up. But it's never made sense on paper. But in the economy of God and in his math and his provision, I can tell you, I could do a whole podcast on just how God showed up for me as a single mom, financially, with gifts and things that showed up in the mailbox. No earthly sense. It was God.
Amen.
So I hope somebody's listening and they feel affirmed that even if the Excel spreadsheet doesn't add up and, some other thing seems easier to make it all work, if you know God has a call for you, do whatever it takes. And sometimes we do bivocational. I worked at a university for 5 years while building the ministry, and that was part of God's provision. But before that, I had been offered a 6-figure job by one of my event clients. And I remember telling my own dad, he was like, "Why would you turn that down?" I said, "Because God didn't call me to work there.
Yeah.
He called me to build a ministry that helps single parents and step parents raise amazing kids. And I've got to put my hand to that plow full time." And thankfully, my dad said, "Wow, well, maybe you need to tell me more about your God." It actually was an awesome conversation. So,
wow.
But I was worried I was about to get a adult, scolding.
Yeah.
And it actually went a different direction.
That's awesome.
Good. Okay. So, this is all gold. This is great. And I don't even know if you know this, but I'm the product of a divorced family, and and both my parents were, they got along really well. I'm sure they did the best they can. My mom would be at my dad and Sharon's house for Christmas and things like that. But you really are, you're a child of divorce your entire life. That never goes away. Right. So what I was thinking is, what are 2 things that you had outlined that I'd seen in your bio and some information that every co-parent needs to know to navigate through this tough time?
Okay. So number 1, if there is one thing, have a happy handoff, whatever it takes. And even if you have to fake it, when you exchange your children, which I look back on my journey, my daughter, we divided when she was 1, divorced at 2. We probably did over 1,000 handoffs in her life.
Wow.
Either picking her up from dad's, him picking her up from me, meeting somewhere at a parking lot. It's not so much where you do them, but how you do that handoff. And there's 3 things I say about that. Be aware of your facial expression, your tone of voice, and your body language. Because even without saying many words, your attitude is completely, clearly evident to your child. And so many hurting parents, it's a huge blind spot. They don't realize how critical the handoff is. And sometimes they'll park a block away from each other at a mall or in a huge Walmart parking lot, and the kid will come and go between the cars, right? So that they don't see each other. Well, that silent war, it screams to a kid that everything's not okay, right? And then the flip side, the opposite is parents will have what I call their co-parent business meetings at the handoff, where they're, hey, you owe me money for child support. Why was it late? Or, I gave you that receipt 2 weeks ago. You owe me $50. Where's my check? You're not getting your kid until I get my money. Or, you know what? I'm working next week and I need to change the pickup time from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Can you do that? Blah, blah. Well, no, I can't do that. You know that. Well, but, little snippets of quick business meetings can turn into ugly, horrible fights. Or even if it doesn't seem like a fight to the adult, maybe it's just a hard conversation. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 2 for the adults. For a kid, that can feel like a 19 when they're waiting in the car and they're just watching their parents, and all they see is that part.
Right.
Or they're told to wait inside. We'll be done in a minute. And they stand outside on the front step and argue and fight. The handoff is critical to children. So trying to make it positive, make it simple and short, no co-parent business at the handoff. And I tell parents the same way you would cheer for a kid on their first day of school, or they're going to summer camp and man, you're going to have a great time. Having that attitude at every single handoff, even if you have to fake it, so that your child knows they have your emotional permission to leave you and go enjoy the other parent. And they don't have to feel guilty. They don't have to worry about you when they're gone. You don't cry when they leave. Oh, I'm going to miss you so much. Don't do that to your kids. I mean, loving parents. Oh, I'm going to miss you while you're away. So switch that and say things like, I look forward to seeing you when you get home. And, I role play this for parents a lot. And, here's one sample. Oh, Angelia, hurry up and get ready. Your dad's going to be here in 10 minutes. And, he's probably going to be late, but we better be ready. And don't forget your toothbrush because you know how he is.
Right.
Right. That 10-second little thing I said to her in private, even before the handoff, already told her, I'm not okay. I'm mad at dad. He's done something wrong. I'm going to be annoyed that you're gone. Right.
Yes.
So the better way to do that is, and it's hard. And I faked this 100 times at least as I was doing these moments. Angel, your daddy's coming. He and Paula are coming. Remember, you're going on a trip, so don't forget your toothbrush and your extra swimsuit and, upbeat voice, positivity. And, when she was a teenager, that my sweet daughter, it was like she was moving to college every other week. I mean, she took so much stuff back and forth, but I was okay with it. I didn't tell her, oh, you have to keep those clothes here because I paid for them. No. Take anything you want, honey. And if you forget anything, we'll work it out. Your dad and I will figure it out, right? Positive, upbeat words, how we prepare the kids before the handoff in private, how we act and either make eye contact or don't. I say be as nice to your ex at the co-parent handoff as you would be at least to the lady at the bank or the man who takes your money at Walmart. Speak, say hello, make eye contact. Because kids are watching, and they are watching their 2 superheroes, the 2 humans they love more than anybody in the world. They are watching you in those handoffs.
Yep.
And how that goes has a huge impact on how they define their life looking back, if it was broken or if it was just divided. So I think it's if there's one thing, that's the thing. Because you're going to do it, even if your kids are 12 when you divorce, you're still going to do it hundreds of times.
Yep.
And you got to show up and be the best version of yourself. And if you're co-parenting with somebody who is really difficult and who is rude and who shows up and tries to argue and fight with you, you still have to stick to your guns and not engage, not fight back, calmly, over and over, we're not going to discuss this here. Let's talk by phone, really anchoring in that you're going to be the best example of yourself to model for your child what adults do in hard situations. So hopefully a mom and a dad both get on the same page and they try to make that really positive so their child will feel less broken. But if it's just one parent trying to start to change that, it's a critical thing for kids. And then the second, real fast, is when you recouple, most people, a lot of people will say anyway, after a divide, one or both may date and then recouple. But before you ever introduce your kids to a person you're dating, at least a week before you do that, have the respect to inform their other parent. You're not asking for their permission. You're not asking for their advice or their opinion. It's not up to them who you date or don't date. But anything that affects your children, you need to update the other adult. Because the worst case scenario, this happens all the time. Little kid, let's say Johnny comes back to mom's house and he met dad's girlfriend. Mom didn't know about it. Johnny says, Mommy, I met daddy's new girlfriend. What? He has a girlfriend? You're kidding me. Right? Yes. Emotional reaction. And little Johnny's like, oh no, am I in trouble? Is daddy in trouble? Oh, mommy's not okay with this. I wasn't supposed to tell. Oh, maybe I should have kept right. It just creates these emotional landmines in little kids and even teenagers. Like, they're not equipped to handle it. And if the other adult doesn't know that they're about to meet the person you're dating, of course they're going to have a reactive response. That's a hard thing to learn about. Even if you get along and you're on a good co-parent team with your ex, it's a big moment. So to protect children, have the respect, send an email, a text, a short phone call, just at least inform the other adult before you introduce your children to somebody you're dating so that your child doesn't end up the accidental messenger and have an emotional, difficult situation.
Yeah,
I am learning so much.
Yeah.
And I can't, I'm just so grateful that you're here. I know that we probably have a lot of listeners who may be single parents or honestly maybe become single parents someday. And I know that we talk about that a lot, is that what we're talking about might not apply to a listener right now, but they might hold on to it for something in the future. And so I just wanted to ask, how can our single parent listeners and friends and loved ones connect with you, get the resources? Where can they engage with you?
Sure. Well, our main website, we have 3 websites. I'll go ahead and say them all.
Yeah.
But the one that will probably always be the anchor to them, even if we move things around, is CoparentingInternational.com. CoparentingInternational.com. That's always going to get to us. And that has the resource, the One Heart, Two Homes, the books, workbooks, all of that. Then for those that are in the Tennessee area, or they're looking for coaching, telehealth coaching, long distance, you can find that on Co-Parenting International, but we also have a brick and mortar called the Center for Modern Family Dynamics. That website is modernfamilydynamics.com. So that currently gets you to really all the same information, but you can come and meet with us in person. You can attend local events in Tennessee. And then the other one, for any stepmoms that are listening, we've got this great annual event that we do called the Stepmom Connection. And so that one is the stepmomconnection.com. And so that is a virtual, this last year in 2020, it was a virtual conference, but that'll be an annual event and in different formats. But we just help bring hope and strategy to women that are either in a stepmom role or they're thinking about getting married and becoming a stepmom. And even, like you said earlier, if it doesn't apply right now, I would bet every listener knows someone in their family or in their neighborhood or in their church that has gone through a divorce. Maybe they were never married, but they're co-parenting, or they're a stepfamily, or they're a young adult who was raised in that. So I think we all know somebody who can use some hope and strategy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're working on a podcast that in fall of 2021, hopefully you'll be able to find that too. And we'll be digging into all these topics with other authors and speakers and awesome. Tackling, especially even tackling co-parenting after 18. How do we help young adults find a voice after they're gone to college and there's no parenting plan that dictates how they spend holidays. How do we help them do that? And how do we help mom and dad learn to let go? That's all part of our future resources that we're creating to keep bringing some strategy around that.
I'm so excited for you. That is so awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your heart. As you were saying that, I was like thinking of all of the 5 to 10 people that I'm like, man,
I got to pass this
podcast on.
Yeah.
So we are so excited and so grateful that you spent your time with us and you were sharing all that you're doing. It's really, really inspiring to us as a baby nonprofit to see, that's women led and founded, to see you thriving and to see the obedience and God blessing you. And so it's just been really encouraging, not only to our listeners, I know, but to us as well. And so thank you so much.
We are very grateful for your time.
Well, I'm grateful for you guys. And so whoever's listening, donate so they can keep doing this. Because I tell you, I'm good at raising money for other people. I don't like to ask for it for ourselves. But I tell people it's amazing. If 10 people give $10 a month, it helps nonprofits grow.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be thousands of dollars. A $10 gift every month over a year, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
and we have some donors that give small levels or larger levels.
Yeah.
But that little bit over time, it gives us something to keep doing those next things. So I hope your listeners will go to your website and give a donation today so that you can keep doing this important work. And I'll be reaching back to you when we do our podcast and have you guys on mine. So
that would be great.
Thank you so much. That was so awesome. Well, we hope you have a wonderful weekend and we will talk to you later.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys.
For more information on Project Brickworks and how you can get involved, visit us online at projectbrickworks.org. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter, like our Facebook page. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button, give us a like, and turn on notifications. If you're listening to this on a podcast, please subscribe and be encouraging with your rating, please. We love you all. Be blessed, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.